Hey, this is Guy from New Plastic, and this is the best tutorial for skin texture in Octane for cinema right now. At least I think. Stay tuned for the second part where I show how to do black skin and show you a little bit of my DAZ to cinema workflow. Before we start, here's 3 important things you gotta remember when doing skin texture in Octane for cinema. The first, you gotta get a good model and you gotta get high quality, high resolution texture maps. You cannot get a realistic skin texture without those things. You can try and paint your own map, it's just not going to get the amount of detail and the amount of realism in a 3D scanned map. That's at least what I learned. But whatever it is, whether it's painted or scanned, it has to be high quality, full of details, and high resolution, and fit the model, which has to be a good model. So the second thing is that Octane is it's not really made for highly realistic skin texture. It's not Octane's fault. I mean, I guess Octane is focusing on other approaches to rendering, but once I got into other programs and other rendering engines and started to investigate them, I realized that there is rendering engines that really master skin texturing, and they give you all these options that allow you to get to the finest levels of skin texture. And you know, skin is all about the detail that sells the realism. And so we're going to try and work around it and improvise with the tools that Octane allows us to have. And the third thing is that there is no one way to do it. There's no template, there's no magic number. That's what I've been looking for, and I always felt like I'm missing something. But every material depends on your model, on your lighting, and on the textures you have, and on the rendering engines that you have. So it's never a template. I look at how it looks and I kind of dial in the details till I get the look that I want. So that's what we're going to do here. So go follow me on Instagram at ojang, subscribe to this channel, comment, all that stuff. I listen to everybody and I really appreciate the support, the questions, the suggestions, all that. So yeah, with all that being said, let's go. So we're going to work with this freehead from the 3D scan store. They got really high quality scans of bodies and heads and faces, really good. So once you downloaded it, get the eyelashes, the eyebrows, and the head, drag them into Cinema, copy them all, and paste them into your project. Now we're going to select a square ratio, Octane render, and now we have to scale up the head to a realistic human scale. So we're going to use this figure to get the scale. That's crucial for skin texturing. So we're going to set 80 focal length on the camera, set a quick HDRI. So path tracing, specular and scatter depth pretty high, very low ray epsilon, static noise, and let's crank up to 1024 samples, but I actually went up to 2048 because skin subsurface scattering can get kind of noisy, but it's up to you. So I'm just going to select a different HDRI. And that looks pretty good. It's too blue, so let's adjust the white balance. And I turned up the highlight compression, but I ended up turning it down. And I'll explain at the end why. A really quick hair material. I'm going to put it on the eyebrows and the eyelashes. So method 1, we use mixed material. So for that, we're going to use a glossy material and mix it with a subsurface scattering. The glossy material, the glossy material is going to have all the textures, all the skin texture, like the diffuse. So we're going to go to the downloaded folder and select all the maps that we need. We don't need the translucency, we don't need the cavity. Let's arrange them real quick. And then we're going to drag diffuse to diffuse, specular to specular, roughness to roughness. And a very underwhelming skin texture, as you can see, but now we're going to get the details. So we're going to mix these 2 normal maps. And this is going to be the micro details of the normal map, so we need them to be very tiny. And we can adjust the size of it, because that's not fitting the model. That's just a repeatable pattern. So this seems right. Maybe we can go a tiny bit smaller, but yeah, as you can see, this is the very, very tiny details. And then we got the normal map that's adjusted for this map, for this model. And we're going to mix them So we're going to increase the power of that map because we mixed it with the other one just to kind of get more detail out of it. Okay, now we got the normal maps. It's okay. Let's kind of set the exposure up so we see it a little bit better. And so this is the roughness map. As you can see, it's rougher on the edges, on the skin, on the lips and the eyes. But I'm gonna make it lighter and I'm gonna invert it using a color correction. So now it's actually less rough on the nose and the eyes and all that. And I'm also gonna make the specular map brighter so that we get a bit more specularity. Now, something I noticed is that it's usually better to increase the contrast and the darkness of the diffuse map. You get more color and more details out of the diffuse map. Now, here's something very important. Since Octane doesn't have secondary specular, we're going to use the coding layer. The coding layer is pretty much what it is, a secondary specular map. So for that, we're going to turn it into a universal material. Let's turn off all the stuff we don't need. IOR, set it to 1.45, but you can play with it. Makes it a bit more shiny. And we don't need medium and we don't need transmission. Now we're going to plug the specular map to the coding node, and you can see it added another glossy map. If we plug in the normal map to the coding normal and increase the roughness, now we got this extra shine that doesn't feel like the skin is wet, but I don't know, there's something to the skin that you can't achieve with the normal specular map, specular layer. So yeah, I feel like that's a huge thing. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. Now we need to mix this with the subsurface red layer. So we're going to copy this. And we're going to unplug the diffuse map because we don't need that. We need everything else. And we're going to turn on medium and transmission because that's going to be a subsurface scattering. The transmission we're going to set at a kind of a red color, and we don't see it for some reason. And that's because we need the albedo to be black. Now you can see it. Turn on medium random walk. And we're going to plug another red color to the albedo of the medium. Let's try and plug it into the transmission. No, it's fine. Yeah. Now, I tried this kind of like blue color in the transmission. Honestly, it didn't make any difference. I ended up changing it back to red. So we're going to set the radius to 0.5. It depends on the size of your model. Set the density to 50. Again, depends on the size of your model and how subsurface scattery you want it to look. And that's it. That's the underlying layer of our skin. And we're going to use a mixed material to combine both of them. I'm going to open this mixed material. And we're going to drag both textures into the mixed material. I'm going to plug them both in. And now if we put it on the model, you can see that it's mixing them both evenly, but we don't want that. We want the edges to have more subsurface scattering, like the nose and the ears. So we're going to use a dirt node for that. We're going to set the strength to 10. We're going to invert the normals, and now you can see that it's giving us this unique, nice looking mixing, where the edges have one material and the rest has another material. We're going to play with it until we get the look that we want, but we need to invert it because we want it to be the opposite, right? So we're going to use a gradient map and invert the nodes. And we're going to set, we don't want it to be black and white, we want them to be kind of gray, dark gray and light gray. For some reason it's black, and that's because we need to turn on fake shadows. Now the subsurface scattering is not black. Good. Now we don't want it to be 100% on the edges, so we're going to turn it down to 80. Maybe increase the radius. This is getting somewhere. It's a bit too strong, so maybe turn it down to 70. Okay, it's pretty good. Let's increase the exposure. This is looking good. So this is pretty much where you want to be. Now, I'm just going to quickly set stronger lights, just so we get a stronger effect from the lights. Turn it down the opacity, turn down the power, turn down the temperature. And we want to really see the specularity and the subsurface scattering. So we need some stronger lights. Just give a quick color to the background. Not this one. Yeah, this looks more like it. Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty much it. We're going to dial more details in after, but that's pretty much it. Let's play with the lighting so we can see how it affects the skin. And look at the specularity. It's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. Subsurface scattering is good. Specularity is really good. Yeah, look at that. Oh, so good. I think the subsurface scattering is a bit strong. We're gonna address that later. But look at this secondary layer, the coating layer. It gives such a nice effect. Let's see. Let's compare how it looks with it and without it, just so we can see the effect. So you see all this kind of like light specularity on the skin. So yeah, the right is with, the left is without. Yeah, it just becomes duller. But again, it doesn't look more wet. You don't want the skin to look wet, but it makes it look more alive. Cool. So the nose is pretty shiny. It's a bit too shiny, so maybe I'll uninvert the roughness map. Yeah, so you see we're not losing the coating layer, but we are toning down the specularity on the nose. I also increased the density of the subsurface scattering so it's less rubbery looking. Maybe somewhere in between, so 85. We don't want the skin to look too rubbery, and that can happen when you get the subsurface scattering to be too strong. Yeah, perfect. Okay, we're done with that. So method 2, we're going to use one material, and that's the universal material. So we're going to copy the glossy material, and now we're going to do the same thing, but only in one material system. It's a cleaner and quicker method, but it gets a slightly different result. And it's up to you to use what you feel like you want to use or what you like better. So let's apply that. So we're going to add a random walk. Now we're going to use the skin texture, the skin color, and the albedo, but we're going to combine it with this kind of light skin texture, skin color. And we're also going to play around with the color, make it a bit lighter, increase the contrast. The subsurface scattering tends to be a bit dark, so we want to light it, make it more lighter. We're going to copy the RGB spectrum from this subsurface scattering texture we have. We're going to plug it in the radius. And now we're going to copy the dirt node from the mix material and plug that in the transmission. And that's going to allow the transmission to be stronger on the edges and lighter in the rest of the skin. So we're going to apply that, and now you see that the edges are a bit more transparent. If we turn it up to white, yeah, it's very transparent here. So if we plug it, if we make it red, now we get a bit of more of a red transparency. And if we turn on the fake shadows, now it really works in full effect. It's too strong, so let's turn down let's solo the dirt and let's turn it down. And we want a bit more kind of red texture in the rest of the skin. So this looks pretty good. Let's introduce some bias, and I think the bias is kind of introduces more of the albedo diffusion. I don't really know. Okay, cool. Now it's a bit too red in my taste, so let's make it a bit less red. This looks better. But now we lost a bit of the subsurface scattering effect. So let's increase the density. Now we gotta balance it out. We want it to be strong enough but not too strong, the SSS. Yeah, if we turn it up to 1000, it's gone completely. So 100 looks good. And now it's not as emphasized in the eyes. That's good. Okay, cool. Let's compare the two. The right is the universal material and the left is the mixed material. Let's match them up a little bit. Okay, so now the left side is the universal material and the right side is the mixed. Yeah, okay, yeah, the mixed material is way better. I think right now the mixed material looks better, the right side. Yeah, let's just see we're not tripping. Yeah, so definitely the mixed material looks better. If we play around with the lighting and get nicer lighting and just kind of like test different lighting out, this is how you really test out your skin material. And yeah, I'm now adjusting like the SSS and the spreading of the dirt nodes and all that. As you can see, the SSS is way too strong. Yeah, and I'm just looking at how the specularity looks from different angles. I add a subdivision surface so that the skin will be smoother. Yeah, so left side is universal, right side is mixed. And I still like the mixed better. Yeah, so again, just testing out different lighting. And the roughness on the hair material is a bit too strong. I ended up decreasing the roughness on the hair material. Not that it really matters, but yeah. So again, I keep kind of testing out the subsurface and I keep playing with the mix until I get the right results. And that's what you're gonna have to do. But using this workflow, you can kind of address your model and your texture the best way. So before rendering, I turned down the highlight compression to 0 and reduced the exposure a little bit so that I could export the passes in linear RGB so I can have better control when I'm color correcting. Then I imported the files into After Effects and I have the beauty file and the passes file. I bring the beauty in, then I overlay with denoise. I have the extractor plugin on all the passes and color correct the gamma to 2.2. Set the denoise on 90%. I use the shadow map as a layer matte and I'm just strengthening the dark parts. Then I have the SSS layer on screen mode 35%. And I do the same thing with the reflection indirect and the reflection itself. Now the reflection layer has a bluish tint because of the texture map, and that helps give a more complex color to the skin. And I'm using the ambient occlusion layer as a matte layer, and again just strengthening the blacks. And I'm doing the same thing with the normals. I selected the G channel, which is the Y. I'm crushing the white, so I just get a rim then I use that as a matte layer to strengthen the highlights with an adjustment layer. Then I have, let's delete that. Then I have the overall adjustment layer. And the curves are turned off, but yeah, I'll turn them back on so that I get just a slight contrast. I'm reducing the saturation by a little bit, sharpening a little bit, graying a little bit, and then I'm animating the exposure. I'm decreasing the exposure on this scene because it was just too strong. And this is pretty much it. I really hope you learned something you haven't learned yet. I'm gonna address black skin on the next tutorial, and I'm also gonna import a model from DAZ, so I'm gonna show you that workflow. It's slightly different, but again, it's all the same. If you liked it, let me know. If you didn't like it, let me know. Subscribe, because it helps me a lot. And also comment. Follow me on Instagram at ojang. Really appreciate all the support. You're awesome, for real. This is amazing. I love doing these. I'm gonna do more. Stay tuned for the next one. And that's it. Have a good day. Peace.